Bitcoin just hit a new all-time high of $115,000. And yet, still millions of people won't give it the time or the attention. As you guys know, I've been in Bitcoin since 2013, and trust me, I've heard all the excuses for why people don't get into it. But today, I want to dive into the top 3 and really understand if they're still relevant in 2025. Also, I want to dive into whether or not Bitcoin can offer you and your family the benefits that it's offered the early adopters. Let's dive into it. I shouldn't buy Bitcoin because I don't understand it. This is, by and large, for 10 plus years, something that I've heard time and time again. And frankly, I understand and I appreciate where people are coming from when they say this. However, when people hear about Bitcoin, they think of it as a financial asset. And for their whole lives, they've had someone telling them what to do with financial assets. If it's a new stock, you've got some stock promoter telling them exactly the messaging they want you to hear with a clear CTA. So you have entire millions of dollars spent in media and marketing campaigns. You have hundreds of YouTubers explaining how the products work. But with Bitcoin, especially in the early days, there's a whack of misconceptions. There is no centralized individual, centralized company spending money to tell people how it works. We're left to our own devices. And unfortunately, in 2025, we don't do well when we're left to our own devices. We don't do well when no one's giving us instruction. So let me help you understand how to understand Bitcoin. Because when somebody asks me, where do I start? Never do I say, start with the encryption protocol, start with the mining protocol. I always say, start with ownership. Just go buy $10. I remember back in 2014, 2015, I had just deployed a couple Bitcoin ATMs around a small city here in Canada. And I would literally go for lunch at the restaurant it was in. I would walk around giving people $10 bills to go to the machine and buy Bitcoin. I think back on those days quite fondly because people often looked at me like I was some crazy guy, and I probably was. But I think it was important getting people used to just buying Bitcoin, get off zero. The most important thing is that triggers a need to learn more. It doesn't become daunting. There's no more work involved in actually learning about Bitcoin because you're now monetarily incentivized to do so. Because now it's fun. Learning can be amazing when you have a purpose and a clear definition as to why you want to learn. All of you watching this video have wasted at least $10 on something stupid that you've already forgotten about. Please spend $10, get off zero, get into Bitcoin, buy a little bit of Bitcoin, and then start learning more and more, step by step by step. This protocol is going to be life-changing forever. The sooner you start understanding how to learn about Bitcoin, the more you'll know in the future.
People get confused. Sometimes they think an economy is money. Money is a database for exchange of goods and services and for time shifting the exchange of goods and services. Money is a database. Money doesn't have power in and of itself. Like you can run the thought experiment of if you're trapped on a remote island, shipwrecked on an island, and you've got $1 trillion in a Swiss bank account. It's worthless. You'd rather have a can of soup. So, all the Bitcoin in the world, you're still going to starve. The actual economy is goods and services.
Real wealth is in what you can produce, not what's in your digital wallet.
I love this mindset so much. And I think that we need to look at money less as a thing and more as a representation of a thing. And see, I like to think of it as money being a token that is simply a representation of the value that we create with our time. And the purpose of that money is to take the value we create with our time and launch it through time and through space. What that means is through space, meaning I can spend my money with anybody, anywhere in the world, regardless of the space that they occupy. If I want to do business with someone who's 300 kilometers away from me, I can. Other side of the world, no problem. My money should have no bounds. I should be able to throw it anywhere, to spend it anywhere, and have an equal amount of value come back to me in, like what Elon's saying, a good or a service. So when we think about money, let's stop thinking about dollar bills with, political leaders' faces on them and signatures. Let's start thinking about it as a human need, as something that we as humans use to protect the value that we create with our time. If you look at this chart here, and I love these charts kind of comparing fiat or dollars generally, I think this chart does a good job explaining how we should look at different forms of money. So these principles are kind of what money needs to be in order for it to be valuable to humans on the long term. Scarcity, right? Bitcoin is obviously scarce. This is hard-coded, written into the protocol. Lots of people, again, to their defense, not understanding Bitcoin, they say, well, it's digital. How can it be scarce? So we understand, and that's because Bitcoin in its protocol has said, hey, there can only ever be 21 million units of Bitcoin. This database that is here, that is digital, will only ever hold 21 million units of Bitcoin. This is guaranteed scarcity. And actually, I wouldn't even give an equal checkmark to gold because we have no idea how much gold there is on the world. While you can assume it's scarce, it's certainly not, as abundant as oxygen. We shouldn't assume that it's as scarce or has the same amount of scarcity as Bitcoin. And we can see throughout the entire chart here, divisibility, portability, censorship resistance, durability, verifiability, everything, Bitcoin has a check mark. And by the way, that check mark, in the same way that it is a check mark for Bitcoin to gold in scarcity, that same check mark is guaranteed because it's written in code that you and I can audit. Can we actually audit it? Do you have the technical skills to do so? Probably not. But the fact that you can learn and do it is a lot better than a system where you can't. The last thing here that Bitcoin lacks is established history. Gold is the only thing that has the established history. And so the question becomes, if we're looking for a true, pure source of money, do we want the things that have the most check marks, or do we want the thing that has the most history? Need I remind you, Blockbuster had more history than Netflix until it didn't. Bitcoin is too volatile. Whew! Something that we need to understand when we're thinking about and talking about volatility is that the entire world is volatile. Something that we've only started experiencing recently, but even earlier when I was in the early days, I related Bitcoin back to airplane tickets. People understand the supply and demand economics of airplane tickets. They know that if you buy an airplane ticket early, it's going to be less expensive than if you buy it closer and closer and closer to the time, until there's a tipping point where they have to fire sale all the open tickets. Now, remember what I said about money. Money is a representation of the value we create with our time. And so if we think of our time, it is incredibly volatile. Why shouldn't our money reflect that volatility? In fact, I would argue it gets worse when you try to artificially stop the volatility. The best analogy here is the fiat, the government, the way that we print money, the way that we make it less scarce. While it may help us in the short term, it always hurts us in the long term. When you inject steroid money into the market, the economy stops to work. And then everybody suffers. Everybody feels pain, and the volatility gets worse. So no, I do not think Bitcoin is too volatile. No, I do not think Bitcoin is bad because of the volatility. In fact, I love the volatility because the volatility reminds me that the world is fragile, that me and my time, that the value that I create with my time has a level of fragility. And so when you think about it, you can think of it in two ways. There's Bitcoin, which is volatile over the short term, but if you're able to zoom out, lower your time preference, humble yourself, and zoom out, you can see a clear path in the right direction. On the other hand, if you look at the dollar or you look at controlled or manipulated currencies, while they might be stable in the short term, when you zoom out, they show a terrible picture of nothing but misery and lost value. And so the question becomes, why do I have this money? Why am I working today? Why am I spending my time creating value for other people today? Is it to have a stable now and a volatile future? Or can we stomach the volatile present for a stable future? I'm too late to Bitcoin. It's too expensive. I've been hearing this. First of all, I thought this. When I found Bitcoin, it had just hit $100 per coin. And at the time, my first gut reaction was, oof, that's a top signal. I have watched Bitcoin go up by a factor of 10 on just the day, right? More than $1,000 Bitcoin has traded up today alone. And then I heard it from my peers, from my friends, from my family. Bitcoin at $1,000 is too much. Bitcoin at $10,000 is too much. 50,000, now 100,000. It's too much. What we fail to realize here is that Bitcoin is a natural representation of our time.
I experienced at the halving party in El Salvador. I got a question from the audience from I think it was a 9 or 10-year-old saying, "Is it too late to buy Bitcoin? You are buying it at $1. You know, it's at $60,000 or $70,000, and you know, is it too late?" And I thought about it for a second, and it struck me that actually I'm way too early, because the world that Bitcoin is creating, by the time it starts to get mature and we see what this is all about, I'll be gone, right? I'll be gone. I won't actually be living during the Bitcoin era of plenty. So I was too early, right? The people who are buying it now, people who are getting into it now, are about to enter into a life that no civilization has ever known before. Everybody, you know, pays the price, gets the price they deserve. And so that has a multiple ways you can look at that.
Yeah, I love that mindset of just future looking. We all work so hard today. And the fiat system that we've been born into forces us to gamble our money so that we have a hope of having it in the future. And unfortunately, this is normalized. Unfortunately, this is something that we are all understand and that we all just accept. And Bitcoin is offering us a way off the rat race, a way out of the rat race, a way off this treadmill of financial instability. And it's offering a period of volatility, a period where some are going to get unfathomably rich, and where some are going to have a high time preference, and they're going to get, they're going to get wrecked because they make a poor decision, or they get greedy and they leverage up, or some other kind of fiat mindset, and they don't have the ability to just buy and hold. But at the end of the day, the more value that you can create today and then lock it in Bitcoin and then store that value that you've already created, store that value in Bitcoin just by buying Bitcoin, and then keep it safe, literally by just keeping it safe. And then in the future, qualifying every purchase you make against, is this quality of life improvement worth the future potential? And that's it. It is so simple. When we have a sound and pure monetary system, when we have a fair and equal monetary policy governing the entire value of the world, life gets a little simpler. And Bitcoin, from my perspective, based on the objective truths that I've shared with today, is the only spot that we can feasibly see that happening. And so before we wrap up, I want to thank you. There has been so many of you guys that have either come up to me when you've seen me at Bitcoin conferences, that have, you're in the comments all the time. You are in my DMs on Twitter. Thank you. Thank you so much for participating in this journey. We're taking a couple weeks of a break here. We're going to stop and pause the Future Proof show. Julian and myself and the team, we're going to be taking it back and really strategizing how we can provide the most value to you, the viewer, and ultimately how we can continue to lean into this mission of future-proofing ourselves. So thank you so much for watching. As always, like and subscribe, and hit me in the comments down below with how you got over your Bitcoin journey, how you got through the humps that present to you during your Bitcoin journey. And as always, stay sovereign.